Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
Today we're going to be talking about something that I think we all have experienced at one point or another, and that is betrayal.
Yeah.
But we're not just going to be talking about, the emotional side of it. We're actually going to be looking at how our brains process this experience.
Right. And to help us with this, we're going to be using the work of Marynês Pereira, who is an expert in neuroscience, quantum physics, and positive psychology.
And that combination of those three things, I think, is what makes this deep dive so fascinating.
Yeah.
Because it's not something that you would normally see put together.
Yeah, definitely.
So, right off the bat, this article says that betrayal feels like a stab in the back.
Right.
And that our brains actually kind of react to it, similarly to how we experience physical pain.
Yeah.
So is there any scientific basis for that?
Well, neuroscience research has actually found that when we go through betrayal, the same regions of our brains that are activated during physical pain actually light up. So like imagine if you have a close friend that reveals your most prized secret.
Yeah.
Or if you have a colleague that is trying to steal your clients.
Ugh, yeah. Just even thinking about those situations makes me feel a little bit sick to my stomach.
Right.
It does feel like a punch to the gut.
Yeah.
But why is that? Why is the pain so intense?
Yeah, so it actually goes deeper than just the emotional aspect of it. Our brains are wired to look for patterns and to look for predictability.
Okay.
And when betrayal happens, that sense of order is completely shattered.
Yeah.
It makes us question everything we thought we knew about a person, about the relationship.
Right.
And the world suddenly feels a lot less safe, a lot less reliable.
Right. Yeah, because you've had this expectation of how this person is going to behave.
Exactly.
And then when they totally go against that, it's like, well, what else is not what I thought it was?
Yeah, and that actually triggers a primal fear response in us.
So it's not just hurt feelings.
Yep.
It's our brains literally interpreting this as a threat.
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty heavy stuff.
It is.
So then we have that feeling of being threatened, which can send us into, a tailspin of overthinking, anxiety.
Exactly.
All of that.
Yeah.
But Pereira suggests that can actually make us more susceptible to betrayal.
Right.
So hold on. You're saying that if I'm worried about being betrayed, I'm actually more likely to be betrayed.
Well, she argues that when we're so focused on our anxieties, we can actually miss those important cues and those red flags that might be right in front of us.
It's like we're almost blinding ourselves to the truth because we're so afraid of it.
Yeah.
Oh, man. You know what? That's so relatable.
Yeah.
Because I can think of so many times when I had this gut feeling that something was a little off.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to believe it, so I just kind of brushed it aside.
Right.
And then later, of course, I'm kicking myself because it's like, I knew it all along.
Exactly.
Why didn't I listen to myself?
And that's exactly what she's saying.
Yeah.
When we are constantly on edge, we actually become less in tune with what's going on around us. And we're more likely to create this false sense of security.
So it's almost like we're trying to protect ourselves from the thing that we're afraid of. But in doing so, we're actually making ourselves more vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so instead of letting our anxiety run the show, it's about finding a way to be alert, but not so consumed with suspicion that we can't see straight.
Exactly.
That seems like such a tricky balance to strike.
It is, but developing that awareness is super important.
Okay.
If we can recognize our own anxiety patterns and see how those might be distorting our perceptions, then we can start to see things more clearly and make better decisions.
Okay, so we've been talking about, person who's been betrayed, but what about from the perspective of the betrayer?
Right.
Like, what is going on in their mind? What's going on in their life that's causing them to act this way?
Right. So Pereira suggests that while each situation is unique, there are certain factors that usually contribute to the act of betrayal, and these include things like a wounded ego envy and lack of empathy. Okay, but that still seems kind of counterintuitive to me. Because why would someone who's been helped turn around and betray the person who helped them?
Right. It does seem a little perplexing, but sometimes receiving help can make people feel vulnerable and inadequate. So the person being helped might feel like they're exposed, that all their weaknesses are out in the open.
Okay.
And in those cases, betrayal can become a way for them to regain that sense of power.
So they're trying to even the score almost.
Yeah.
Even if it means hurting the person who was genuinely trying to help them.
Right.
Wow, that just adds like a whole other layer of complexity to this.
Yeah.
So it's not always about intentional malice. It's this like tangled web of emotions and insecurities and who knows what else.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that betrayal can show up in so many different ways.
Right.
It can be things like stealing clients, spreading rumors, breaking promises in personal relationships.
Yeah.
It really is a multifaceted issue.
Okay, so this is all pretty unsettling, honestly.
If betrayal can come from such a complicated place, how can we protect ourselves?
Right.
Like, what are some practical steps that we can take?
Well, as Pereira says, knowledge is power.
Okay.
So the more we understand about these dynamics of betrayal, the better equipped we are to actually navigate these situations.
So it's about being proactive, not just reactive.
Exactly. We can start by paying closer attention to people's actions, not just their words.
Okay.
And really being selective about the things that we share, especially sensitive information.
Right, yeah.
Setting clear boundaries and expectations in our relationships, both personal and professional, that can help to protect us as well.
So it's about being aware without being completely distrustful
Exactly.
of everyone around us.
Finding that balance.
Okay.
And most importantly, remembering that the betrayer is ultimately responsible for their choices.
Right.
It's not a reflection of your worth or character.
That's such an important reminder because it is easy to kind of fall into that trap of self-blame after being betrayed.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we can't control other people's actions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So focusing on what we can control, like our own choices, our boundaries, our awareness,
Right.
that's key to moving forward.
Okay, so we've talked about the pain of betrayal. We've talked about, some steps we can take to protect ourselves.
Right.
But how do we actually move forward from this experience?
Right.
How do we heal and how do we start to rebuild trust?
Yeah.
That's a perfect place to stop for now, and we'll pick up that conversation in part 2 of this deep dive.
It's interesting how Pereira approaches the aftermath of betrayal. She doesn't just focus on, surviving the experience. She actually sees it as a potential catalyst for growth.
Oh, I love that perspective. So instead of becoming bitter or jaded, we can actually use this experience to become stronger and wiser.
Exactly. And Pereira highlights a few key elements that are involved in building resilience in the face of betrayal. The first is about reframing our perspective. So instead of dwelling on all the negativity, we can try to see the experience as a difficult but valuable lesson.
That sounds good in theory, but I have to say it feels almost impossible to do when you're actually going through it.
Yeah.
When you're in the thick of it, all you can think about is the pain and the anger.
Yeah, I hear you. And those feelings are totally valid. It's important to acknowledge those feelings and let yourself process them. But holding on to them for too long, that just prolongs the suffering.
Right.
Pereira suggests practicing self-compassion,
Okay.
recognizing that we're all human, we all make mistakes. And that includes extending that compassion to ourselves.
Right.
Maybe we didn't see the signs. Maybe we trusted someone who ended up breaking that trust.
So forgiveness plays a role here. Not just forgiving the person who betrayed us, but also forgiving ourselves.
Absolutely. Holding on to resentment and self-blame that keeps us stuck in that cycle of pain, it prevents us from moving forward.
So how do we break free from that cycle?
Well, Pereira also emphasizes the importance of seeking support. Talking to trusted friends, family members, or even a therapist can be incredibly helpful.
It's true, sometimes just having someone listen to us and validate our feelings can make such a big difference. It reminds us that we're not alone in this.
Exactly. And as we heal, we can start to rebuild our sense of trust, both in ourselves and in others. And Pereira highlights the importance of surrounding ourselves with people who demonstrate genuine integrity, empathy, and respect. People who consistently show up for us.
So it's about shifting our focus from the negative to the positive, from the people who hurt us to the people who support us.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And as we rebuild, that's when discernment becomes even more important. After experiencing betrayal, we might be a little more cautious, a little more selective about who we let into our inner circle.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Right. It's about learning from our past and making more informed choices about who we trust moving forward.
Okay, so it's not about shutting everyone out. It's about choosing more wisely.
Exactly. It's about recognizing our own worth and choosing relationships that reflect that worth. And speaking of choosing, Pereira actually ties this back to her expertise in quantum physics in a really interesting way.
So I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
How does quantum physics come into play here?
Well, she talks about this idea of energetic alignment. So by focusing on building these positive, resilient relationships, we actually attract more of the same into our lives.
So it's like this ripple effect.
Yeah.
Where if we radiate positive energy and set clear intentions, we draw in people who are on a similar wavelength.
Exactly. It's a really powerful concept, and it speaks to our ability to actually shape our own reality, to create a life that's filled with connections that nourish and support us.
This has been such an insightful conversation. I feel like I'm starting to see betrayal in a whole new light. Not just as this painful experience, but as this opportunity for growth and transformation.
I agree. And, while betrayal can definitely leave us feeling lost and disoriented, Pereira's insights give us this roadmap for finding our way back to a place of strength and wholeness.
So it's about taking those difficult lessons and using them to build a brighter, more authentic future for ourselves.
Absolutely. And part of that brighter future involves understanding how to cultivate those resilient, trustworthy relationships from the very beginning. Which brings us to a really important question. What are the signs of genuine trust and mutual respect that we should be looking for?
That's a great question, and one that deserves its own deep dive. So that's exactly where we'll pick up in part 3 of this episode. We'll be exploring those essential building blocks of healthy, lasting relationships. So stay tuned. Okay, so we're back, and we're going to be talking about those signs of genuine trust and mutual respect that can help us build stronger, more resilient relationships. Where do we even start?
Well, Pereira suggests that we actually start with ourselves.
Okay.
Cultivating self-awareness is really key.
Well,
By understanding our own values, needs, and boundaries, we're better equipped to actually attract people who align with them.
so it's about knowing who we are, what we stand for, and then finding those people who kind of resonate with that.
Exactly. And it's not necessarily about finding people who are just like us.
Right.
But it's about finding people who respect our differences and appreciate us for who we are.
And that makes me think about the importance of open and honest communication,
Yeah,
because it can feel really scary to be vulnerable.
right.
But without that vulnerability, how can you really connect with someone on a deeper level?
You're absolutely right. Open communication is the foundation of trust and understanding.
Yeah.
It's about feeling safe to express our thoughts and feelings without fear of judgment or, reprisal.
And it goes both ways, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about us speaking our truth, but also being open to hearing the other person's perspective,
Exactly.
even if it's completely different from our own.
And that's where true resilience in a relationship comes from.
Yeah.
It comes from that ability to navigate disagreements and conflicts in a constructive way. It's about finding common ground while still respecting each other's boundaries.
So it sounds like building these kinds of resilient relationships, it takes work. And it takes a willingness to be both vulnerable and accountable.
You hit the nail on the head. It's a process.
Yeah.
It's not a destination. We need to be mindful of our actions, communicate effectively, and strive to treat each other with respect and kindness.
And I think it's important to acknowledge that even in the most resilient relationships, there are going to be misunderstandings, there are going to be conflicts.
Absolutely.
It's inevitable. It's
Yeah.
really about how we handle those situations.
Right. Pereira reminds us that forgiveness is so important
Yeah.
for maintaining healthy relationships. And that's not about condoning hurtful actions, but it's about releasing that negative energy that keeps us tethered to the past.
So forgiveness is almost like an act of self-care.
Exactly.
It allows us to move forward and create space for healing and growth.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that forgiveness is also a process.
Right.
It's not just something you can switch on and off.
Right.
It takes time and patience. And, sometimes we have to revisit past hurts and reframe them.
Well, this deep dive has given us a lot to think about. We've explored the complexities of betrayal, but we've also learned so much about building those resilient, authentic, and fulfilling relationships.
Yeah, by understanding the neuroscience, the psychology, and even the quantum physics of human connection, we can make more conscious choices, set healthy boundaries, and ultimately create a more loving and supportive world.
So thank you all for joining us on this journey of discovery. We would love to hear your thoughts and experiences. And don't forget to check out the work of Marynês Pereira, whose insights inspired this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep connecting, and keep diving deep.